We'll move on to
definitely.
Insidious, The Red Door. So, unsurprisingly, Cam and I did not see it. One, because we're both wusses when it comes to horror, and two, just because we have. I mean, what this is the fourth Insidious, right? Fifth.
Fifth.
Have you seen any of them, Tyler?
I have not.
You seen any of them? I haven't either. Like, I've seen The Conjurings, but I've never seen any of the Insidiouses.
I don't think you're like the only Insidious. I love Insidious 1, and then every Insidious after I've given it 2 out of 5 stars.
Or a 2.
I mean, 2.
Same as me. Exactly.
Yeah, I've given every Insidious after the first one a 2 out of 5 stars. So it's not like it's like Evil Dead. I wanted you guys to watch because of how highly Seth and I hold those movies. Same with like the Screams. Obviously, I love that you guys watch, but like you don't need to watch Insidious. Maybe the first one, but
I think the first one's great. To be fair,
first one is fantastic. I love the first one. I think the first one's a delight.
Yeah, so
I would only watch this for my boy Patrick Wilson. I like Patrick Wilson a lot.
Yeah,
shout out his directorial debut. Allegedly not great though.
Yeah, wow. We'll jump into the review and their thoughts on it. So, Insidious: The Red Door, the quick 1-sentence summary. Which, as someone who hasn't seen any Insidious, this is just like a mumbo jumbo sentence description that just makes no sense to me. But I'm sure to anyone who's seen Insidious, it makes sense. The Lamberts must go deeper into the further than ever before to put their demons to rest once and for all. Directed by Patrick Wilson. First time he's kind of pulling a Anthony Perkins from the Psycho movies, where he's been in them all, but then by the end of them, he wants to give his own directorial spin on it. So and from what I've seen, a lot of people have said like the direction was decent, but the movie itself wasn't too great. But of course, we'll turn it over to George and Seth to get their thoughts on it. So kind of do what me and Cam did with Joyride, where talk about it without spoiling it or giving away kind of the big moments, and give your quick thoughts and a review, and then jump into some specific moments you want to cover. I'll start it off with George.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to Seth. I don't know if this is a movie like we care about going into spoilers. Really, I don't think there is
one thing I want to.
Yeah, there are things to spoil, but like I don't know. This isn't like a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 where I'm like itching to talk about spoilers. But no, I applaud Patrick Wilson. I really do. I think there were, and I said this in my Letterboxd review, there were moments in this movie that like genuinely showed that like he has an eye for horror. Like he's been in Insidious, he's been in The Conjuring, he knows what he's doing within horror. But on the opposite end of that, unfortunately, there were also moments that showed that this was his first time directing a film. The tone was kind of all over the place for me, particularly in that first half of the movie before we kind of really dive into things. The pacing was just, there was a point in that first half where I was like, I feel like I'm just watching nothing. Like nothing's really happening. Like the plot hasn't really started or progressed at all. And we're like 45, 50 minutes into this movie. And that's not like knocking Patrick Wilson. That's more so knocking the writers. This movie felt like it could have been 45, 50 minutes, but they just needed to fulfill like
film.
Yeah, it could have been a short film, but they just needed to fulfill an almost 2-hour runtime. So like, I hate to knock Patrick Wilson because it's his directorial debut. And again, like this, he showed that he cares about this franchise. He really does. And there were certain sequences where I was like, oh, that was like genuinely like surprisingly well directed. But again, on the other side of that, there were moments where I was like, damn, this movie feels very lazy, very incompetent. The writing feels super uninspired. We're kind of like rinse and repeating a lot of the things we've already seen in what was the last one called? The Last Key, and then Insidious chapters 2 and 3. And then one thing, and Seth, I'm pretty sure you're in agreement here. I am so sick and tired of jump scares. Like, so they are so predictable, especially when this movie gave away like 3 of their biggest jump scares in the trailers. Like if the scene, and this isn't a spoiler because it was in the trailer, but if the scene when he's in the MRI, if I didn't know about that scene prior to the movie, that would have made me shit my pants. But like, I knew it was coming because 1, I saw it in the trailer. 2, it's just like the most obvious jump scare that's coming my way. So I don't know. I didn't love this movie. I went with a 2 out of 5, which is exactly what I've given the last 3 Insidious movies. I don't think this does anything to awaken a dying franchise. And obviously this is all in my opinion. I know there are people that, liked the Red Door. I know there are people that do enjoy the Insidious franchise, but for me, it feels very lazy. It's just not scary. And again, no hate to Patrick Wilson, because I do think there are moments in this movie that showed that he knows horror and cares about this franchise. Just the writing around this movie absolutely sucked.
Yeah. So I'm like a bit higher than George. I'm not like 2.5, so I'm not exactly high on it. I think, as George said, like I went into this with optimism, because obviously we know that Patrick Wilson has been in this franchise since day one. He clearly cares about the projects. So I kind of went into this knowing that and being a little bit more optimistic. And I actually do think, same as George, there are some, I mentioned in my review, there is some really cool shot sequences. Like the MRI scene, I think was really creative, but it's just the fact that it was already given away.
Yeah, we saw it already.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's one of the scenes where I was like, damn, like this is a really good horror moment. Like it's claustrophobic, it's giving me anxiety. But while I'm watching it, I'm like, I've seen it. I know exactly what's about to happen.
Yeah, it is a major issue, because there are a few sequences like that. I think the main pitfall, the main downfall of this film is really down to the writing, which is surprising, because I know that they got the I don't know if they had different writers each time, but they had the guy on who wrote the first one, which I think is actually, like me and Josh said, really good.
Which is a good movie.
Yeah. So it's like, it was really, really uninspired. They took so much from the previous films, and it is just becoming a rinse and repeat now. They tried to create this development of kind of fatherly bond, of a fatherly figure, of the absence of that with Dalton's character and what's Patrick Wilson called in the film?
Oh God,
what's he called?
I have no idea.
Josh Lambert. Yeah. So they tried to create this kind of family bond, which I think was a good attempt, but it never really hit me. Like, we'll go into this, but like the ending, for example, it's just left me with such a sour taste. Like, I think most of the narrative beats they tried to hit when it comes to the emotion just didn't work, because the writing felt so lazy. And I will say the first half an hour, yes, there were some. It did try to kind of drive in the silly. I guess there were some jokes which didn't really work for me. But I will say that the first half an hour, 40 minutes, I actually quite enjoyed, because there were these things as well. I was like, oh, that's cool. I think the Insidious films, no matter how much I don't like them, they always provide me nostalgia of just watching the first one with these characters anyway. And it did feel slightly unnatural, but I was kind of optimistic. And then the further it went, the longer it got. It felt really long for like an hour 50 or whatever. It feel
long, yeah.
Yeah,
it was a long hour 50.
It's like you said, it's like 45 minutes of source material into a nearly 2-hour film, which just doesn't work. And I really do think it's downright lazy. And one thing I will say, and this isn't really a spoiler, I mean, I guess it is. So we
can start spoiling. If you haven't seen Insidious, just skip ahead maybe 10-15 minutes, maybe a little less, but we're gonna start just getting into some whatever.
I'm sick of the further. Like I'm so
dude. Yeah.
It's not scary. It's stupid. They didn't utilize lipstick face. What's his name? Lipstick face.
Lipstick demon.
He looks he's laughable now.
He's laughable. Yeah. Like he used to be like this, like goddamn frightening, like paranormal presence, and like in this movie, like. It's as if like Patrick Wilson forgot that like that's the main character. Like that should be the main character of your movie.
Yeah, the thing is as well, I guess you could say it was ambitious because they tried to go for this bond, this family dynamic family drama. But at the same time, it's an Insidious film, man. And the further is just so the first film when obviously Josh goes into the further to save Dalton.
Yeah.
It was actually frightening. It worked because there were these unique characters. We've seen this now. We know it. And they underutilized the fucking, he's got the weirdest name, lipstick devil face man. And they underutilized him so often. And he has become like almost a joke now. And it just doesn't hit the same. You know, you compare the sequences we had with him in this one, which were barely any, to, for example, in the first film, George, you know, where he pops up behind Josh.
Yeah.
The infamous shot.
Yeah.
And it's just so
one of the most iconic shots in horror.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it's just,
Yeah,
it feels like they're kind of just at the point now where they're just kind of chucking this character in to remind you this is an Insidious film.
yeah.
This is the guy you were scared of fucking in 2010, where they're not utilizing them. They're trying to portray this horror figure around this less than average family drama, which again for me didn't work, and it didn't work.
It's so. I don't know if you agree with me here. I think this is the best Insidious movie from like Dalton's perspective. Like I really liked what they did with Dalton's character in this movie, but at the same time, I think they focused a little too much on Dalton and his relationship with Josh, and they like it felt as if they were writing a family drama, completely forgot that it was an Insidious movie, and then when they were done writing the movie, they were like, "Oh shit, this is an Insidious movie. Let's go back and throw some Insidious shit
and
in
then
here."
throw some throwback shots from the first film.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? There was like a few sequences near in the end where it was literally just shot for shot, and I understand what you're trying to do with it, but you know for a fact at that point they were like, I don't know how much more material we have here. Let's just give someone a blast in the park. Show this guy, which by the way is called the lipstick face demon.
Lipstick face demon.
Weird in itself. Let's show this guy. Let's give him the Insidious feel without providing any of the scares. And it doesn't matter how good or how, like you said, I think I mentioned in my review, Patrick Wilson has a keen eye for horror when it comes to shooting, which is cool. But it doesn't matter how much he does because the writing was so lazy.
And speaking of,
it took me out of it.
Dude, I don't know if my favorite shot of this whole movie, can you take a wild guess? Like what my favorite shot of this whole movie, like my favorite like frightening sequence.
Well, I'm going to say that it was one of the walking ones because they kind of reminded me of It Follows a little bit.
Okay. So,
you know what I mean? With the window and he's like lifting up. And
so there's one shot. So there are two shots. And I'll call these like my tie for my first. I loved when we're in like the further or wherever we are, where it's like, you know, foggy and shit. That reminded me a lot of Malignant, and I thought that was shot super cool. Like the color grading drops down to like a blue. It gets very dark. You're kind of in like the perspective of like the bad demon at times. I think it's really cool. My favorite shot in the movie though is when Dalton's roommate is like she's like lighting up like the Christmas lights or whatever, and it keeps going on and off and on and off, and she's talking and not looking at Dalton, and I'm staring at Dalton because I'm like, something's about to happen, and then it goes on and on,
really weird and being silent, just changing,
and then it goes off, and the lights come back on, and like his eyes are shot, and I'm like I thought that was a very cool sequence, which again just shows that I think Patrick Wilson, like, give him a competent script, and I think we could have a really solid horror film on our hands.
Yeah, like I know what you mean. I think my favorite shots were probably the MRI scene, if not for the predictability. Well, not predictability. We already fucking knew what would happen.
Yeah, we knew it was coming.
I think that was just creative, and it really made me feel like anxious, claustrophobic. Because I just found that like I think I also liked the kind of It Follows like shots. You know, when he's lifting up, trying to like find who's who on the pictures. Then his dad's ghost is there walking towards. I kind of like that shit. But again, it's just like once it happens, we get all this anticipation through something builds up. It's just not very scary, which is a little bit disappointing, to be honest. And I think that
I hate being like that guy to be like, this horror movie wasn't scary. Because like I'm not sitting here trying to be like manly about it. I'm sitting here telling you like I think jump scare fatigue is real. And I think when you've seen as many horror movies as you and I have, they just become so goddamn predictable.
Do you think this would be scary for Cam and Tyler?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. I think, the first one was scary. But like, would I like to see him do... Is this confirmed? This isn't confirmed as the final Insidious film, is it? Like,
no.
Is it?
I doubt it.
Because I heard that it was confirmed as the final one, but they're going to be doing a spin-off. If so, I'd like to see him do it again, but I'd prefer him to see him do his own projects outside of this universe. Because I think they've rinsed this dry now. We've gone to the further. We've seen we've seen the antagonist. What more can you really do in this universe? I mean, maybe they can. But I'd like to see Patrick Wilson do like a little horror project on his own kind of thing. Perhaps try and write something himself. Who knows? But like, a low budget horror, whatever it might be, and do his own thing. Because I think I don't really care for these films anymore. Every film, even though this isn't, I don't think this is the worst one for me. Every single film, I've not rated an Insidious film positively since the first one, and that was a 4, and then it's straight down to 2s and 2.5s, and a 1.5 for one, I think. So yeah, I'd like to see him doing other things. I think it's a shame because I think he clearly has some directorial juice, I guess, but I just don't care about Insidious films anymore. I think that's the main issue, and I think that's the same for a lot of people. Although, actually, it is doing quite well at the box office, if I'm not mistaken. It's already made.
It still has like a cult follow. Like people still show up to see Insidious movies, like including us, obviously.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Although I don't actually know if I would if I wasn't doing this. You know what I mean? I didn't actually see the last one.
That's literally what I was thinking. So I saw Insidious Friday night. And me and Victoria and I had dinner reservations at 7:15. So I was like, okay, I'll go catch this movie by myself at 4:30. While I'm walking to the theater, I'm like dressed for dinner. It's so hot and humid in New York City. I'm sweating. The only thing I'm thinking to myself is I would never see this movie if it wasn't for the ReelTok Podcast.
That's what I mean. Like I didn't go and see. I've not been seeing Insidious film in the cinema since the one.
Exactly.
The last two I just watched at home when they were streaming. I was like, oh, cool, whatever. I would have never gone to see this. But then you say that they still make money, don't they? Like
that. Well, I mean, my movie was at 4:30 on a Friday, and the theater, like, it wasn't packed, but there were people there.
Mine was at 12:30.
Yeah,
PM, and it was early, and it was nearly full. Yeah, which surprised me. It was very weird. But yeah, I give it a 2.5. George give it a. Do you give it a 2?
A 2. Yeah, I went with a 2. Yeah, so I think that could just about wrap up our Insidious chat. Not much spoiler talk, but overall,